So let's park that. Let's put that rabbit hole to one side and move on to well, more fiction, but actually entertainment as well in the shape of our media picks for the month. I know that you wanted to flag a particular news story this month, so I'll let you take the first bite at this.
Yeah, you talked about sort of historical fiction and so on. I'd argue there's more history actually in my media pick than perhaps than certainly in that website we were discussing a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
My media pick it's a sort of Ave et Vale really this week
Mm.
to Anthea Bell.
Mm.
Anthea Bell was a very accomplished translator, British-based translator. Um, but the reason I picked her for our Archeo Soup Pipeline watching brief media pick is she translated the majority of the Asterix adventures into English.
Mm.
And I have to say, one of the Guardian obituary delightfully point. It's a wonderfully accomplished life. She died aged 82 recently. She got a full obituary in the Guardian, and there's this wonderful story that when she was translating Asterix in Britain, there was a problem with the humour,
Mm.
uh, and a lot of a lot of the jokes that appeared in the original French weren't directly translatable. So
Mm.
what she did was, and the inspired decision that she took was to relocate the characters to this sort of sub PG Woodhouse, Bertie Wooster type England, where they say, "Oh, jolly good old fellow," and what, and yeah, good chaps, and they all stop for tea at 4 o'clock, and all the rest of it, and apparently René Goscinny, who was obviously the co-creator of Asterix, allegedly said, "Ah, vieux fruit, old fruit. I wish I'd thought of that one."
Mm.
In other
Mm.
words, that it had the real seal of approval from the original author. And in fact, here's our family copy of Asterix
I
in
want
Britain.
to bring it up a little bit into frame.
Oh yeah,
Ah, Asterix in Britain.
Asterix in Britain. It's gloriously funny. It
Hmm.
says obviously it's about the French view of the British, but it's also about the British view of the British.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's deliciously funny. It's gently satirical. It's a wonderful example. It's one of those translations that reads as though it's not a translation. Anthea Bell was a wonderfully talented translator,
Mm.
and I mean, this um, two generations of our family have enjoyed this particular copy of
Hmm. Hmm.
Asterix,
Hmm.
and I've got a pile of others on the desk here next to me, and I hope long may they continue to delight future generations. And the wonderful thing about Asterix is that it is one of those stories that I think it must have been translated to virtually every major language on the planet, and
Hmm.
it's even been translated into Latin because
Yeah,
it's such a brilliant conceit that you have this small Gaulish village that can explore the whole, not just the whole of the Roman Empire, but actually can explore the whole of modern life as well. So you've got Asterix in the Mansions of the Gods, which talks about high-rise living, and you've got Asterix in Cleopatra, which takes the proverbial out of Hollywood epic movies, the
yeah,
greatest story ever drawn,
yeah.
and so on, and also wonderful gags. The and Anthony Bell working with Derek Hockridge, who was an academic. Um, they worked on the English versions, and you've got the lovely gags like so. Idée fixe, Asterix's dog in the French becomes dogmatics because
Yes.
and the puns are just glorious.
Yeah.
And of course everybody remembers Cacophonics the Bard,
Yeah. Yeah.
because of
And also, Getafix, the druid.
absolutely,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
again coming on the back of the 1960s,
yeah, yeah,
that whole pop culture, absolutely. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
they're great jokes.
I'll cards on the table. I've never I've never been a huge fan of Asterix, and so much of for some reason they've never really been in my life. And when I did come to Asterix, he slightly annoyed me here and there because I couldn't quite understand how he could be interacting with the Romans and the Vikings and Cleopatra. I think I was just slightly too old when I first came across him. Maybe, but I do find myself revisiting Asterix and very much appreciating, in fact, precisely what Anthea Bell did. I appreciate the puns. I appreciate the witty humour which has been injected through by virtue of the language, and it's directly connected with her work. I'm very impressed to hear actually some of these specific things in terms of the fact that the original stories related to the difference between tu and vous. So whether if you're familiar or not with the person that you're talking to, that's a very French joke, but we don't have an English equivalent in terms of formal language and informal by indicating it through the words we use. So the fact that she's able to take that and work with it, and presumably not, in such a way that didn't require them to redraw the book. Presumably, that her best work would be working with the imagery that was already available.
Absolutely.
I'm very impressed, and I promise that in the near future I will revisit Asterix with a much more open mind. I think I'll try and pull him out of a real world timeline. I'll try and sort of enjoy him from that standpoint, because I did like, for example, Getafix and Dogmatics and Obelix. So it is good stuff, definitely.
I think actually before we finish, I mean, we have to say that she didn't just do work on the Asterix books. She had a formidable record translating French and German. That wonderful. The British are often criticised for not doing other languages and other cultures. She did her best to try and remedy that. She was involved in translating Freud, Franz Kafka, Stefan Zweig, W.G. Sebald. It's a formidable career, and Asterix is perhaps the light relief, but fabulous for it.
Yeah, and also just quickly, I saw that her most recent Asterix book was in 2013, so she was working up until very recently, actually.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, well, my media pick for the month, I don't think we need to go into gross detail on this, but it is quite simply the return of the Doctor Who, in the shape of our wonderful. Well, it's been a year of nothing, and then suddenly this whole new direction where they are very deliberately using the Doctor, I think, in a slightly more magical way. The fact that she's now a woman isn't necessarily the focus of her character, but I love how they are working also with some of the original intents of the Doctor Who series, in so much as originally Doctor Who was quite a lot about visiting historical periods in a sort of an educational way. So I remember reading. I've read quite a lot about Doctor Who over the years, reading about how early on they wanted to visit historical periods of the Saxons and Vikings and show British children, this kind of thing. And yes. What we got in the third episode of series 11, I think we're on now.
The new count, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, of the new count, yes. Was the Doctor and co landing in Alabama. And witnessing, I suppose you could say, the epic actions, the simple but epic actions of Rosa Parks.
Simple action, epic consequence.
Absolutely, and the relatively subtle way that they go about highlighting what it would be like to be, for example, a modern British black man plonked into Alabama, but also one of the funniest moments of the episode for me was the fact that they have with them Yaz, who is a woman of Asian, I think specifically maybe Pakistani origin, as opposed to Indian. I think certainly Asian, but they don't know how to classify her. They don't know
Yes.
in this black and white system, literally, they don't quite know where she should sit, so she ends up sitting actually in the front of the bus. It highlights in many ways the absurdity of an apartheid system, and the story is, I think, quite beautiful because it's a way to show people who especially in Britain who aren't fully aware of Rosa Parks what she did, without actually putting, for example, the Doctor or any other character as in her place as the hero. It's not as though any action in this episode um, by the Doctor is something that ultimately leads directly to, say, the civil rights movement. Rosa Parks is still the person who makes that action and does the thing. What we do, or what we see rather, the heroes of the show do, is enable her and protect that moment in time. They're protecting history, and I like that. It was a good episode, and it wasn't. It was a refreshing change of tone from some of the more recent Doctor Who stuff, where it's been sort of epic. The universe is going to end. This was much more about the direction of humanity, and it felt oddly low key, but also I use that word very deliberately, very epic as well in terms of its implications.
I agree with you. I love this episode. I think it was, as you say, to coin a phrase, in recent years there have been criticisms that Doctor Who has disappeared so far up itself it's become unwatchable.
Because the Doctor was basically a god. He
Yeah.
was getting to the point where he was unrelatable.
Exactly. And what the new this is the first series by the new showrunner Chris Chibnall, and obviously the new Doctor, the first woman Doctor, who's played beautifully by Jodie Whittaker, who is in terms of her acting and also the look, she's channeling bits of David Tennant and bits of other earlier Doctors. There's bits of Peter Davison in the clothes and so on.
Yeah.
But it's part of the Doctor Who continuum, but it's something very new and very fresh. On this occasion, I think we also have to credit the writing credit was to Chris Chibnall and Mallory Blackman. And Mallory Blackman, obviously very well known as an author, particularly of novels for young people. And unfortunately, it would appear, or remarkably, it would appear that she's the first writer of colour to write for Doctor Who ever.
Wow. Wow.
Now,
Okay.
So, but that, what a debut. As you say, I think the beautiful, I think there were several things about it which I thought were very clever, and actually a couple of things I thought were very brave. What was very clever was, as you say, to make the heroes of the piece, the ostensible heroes of the piece, who are the Doctor and Yaz and her other and the other two new assistants. They're actually participants, but they're not. They're participants, but they're only active because they actually have to do nothing.
Yeah, they have to do their best to stay out of history's way.
Exactly. Yeah. That was a very, very clever thing, because the worst situation they could have got into was the Doctor saving the civil rights movement and giving Rosa Parks Rosa Parks as a character in the in the series in the episode retains all her agency. It's all her own work, if you like. That when she refuses to get up, knowing what the consequences are going to be, that's her decision. And I have to say, it was a beautiful, understated performance as Rosa from Vinette Robinson, as well as a lovely, lovely performance. But there's a couple of other things I thought about it, which were, I thought, one, I think it's almost subliminal, but you've mentioned the background again, the segregation and the segregationist system in Alabama in the mid-1950s was very subtly but very sharply and painfully explained for a modern audience who maybe didn't quite understand what it actually entailed. Yeah. That's quite brave in its own way these days, given that the way that race is being and immigration is being weaponized by certain parts of the political spectrum. But the thing I thought was really brave, and it was almost a sort of blink and you'll miss it moment, but the villain of this particular episode. I think it was called, is it Cranzo. He's a time traveler, and basically, although it's not stated explicitly, from the things that he says, he's a white supremacist who's been radicalized in prison.
Hmm. Hmm.
And because he travels through, he's traveled through time to try and prevent Rosa Parks from
79 centuries he's gone back.
yeah,
Yeah, sort of 72 or something. Yeah.
to try and prevent the civil rights movement, that seminal moment in the American civil rights movement, and in the campaign for anti-racism across the world, basically. And he I think he talks about those people at one point. The implication being he's talking about people of color.
Yeah. Or you people won't get above your station.
You people won't get above your station. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It's not, you're not told what he is, but it's clear from the way those comments that he is one of those guys that would have been carrying a wiki torch through Charlottesville.
Well, yes, quite possibly, but I think one of the, because there has been it would be remiss of me not to mention, there has been a bit of pushback, for example, from the Daily Daily Heil, I don't know how you pronounce it, Daily Mail, that's it, sorry, the Daily Mail, who have that they chose to highlight that there were some people tweeting about the fact that, well, we don't want social issues in Doctor Who, we want escapism, and so on and so forth. But there's an article, one of the links here that we highlighted. There's a quote here that says, "At times, Rosa felt a bit racism is bad 101, but it would also be naive and optimistic to feel that the message is not still necessary."
Yeah.
And I think that's a good way of putting it, and it is in that sense still necessary. And I mean, as an aside to that, I also saw a review for another TV show that I saw this month, for the Netflix series of Sabrina's Adventures, which is a complete retelling of Sabrina the Teenage Witch. It's a bonkers take on it's a much darker compared to the Melissa Joan Hart series. Yeah. But in some of the reviews for that, people were saying, again, talking about social rights issues and social justice issues rather, sorry. And so on and so forth are being brought in. Oh, I just want to have escapism. I just want normal life. But since when is it the role of science fiction or a show about a witch to show or to reflect rather a boring catch-all vision of normalcy? In some respects, it is the role of these shows actually not to challenge an unthinking worldview, especially. I mean, if you're watching a show about a witch, I'm sorry, you shouldn't expect normal. And I think the same goes as well for time travel. I think for too long, Doctor Who has sometimes risked falling into a very non-specific role. I'm not saying it has to be challenging you all the time, but at times when you go back in time. That's a lot to not use the word time in that sentence there. You're going to come across situations that are challenging, whether that's meeting people who you don't agree with, or the real world circumstances of people in the past. And I was reminded actually when we were setting up for this agenda, for this this month's watching brief, of the episode where I think Tennant meets Shakespeare.
Yes.
And what we got in that instance was a fascinating. In some respects, it relates to this episode, Rosa Parks' episode, quite interestingly. So Shakespeare describes his then assistant, the doctor's then assistant, as a Nubian beauty, because she's a black woman who he's hanging around with, and rightfully touching on the fact that yes, he would have seen black people in the past. He knows this sort of. It's not shocking to him to see this woman. But somehow he's also superhuman. He's turned into someone who is conjuring reality through his words, and it interacts with some aliens who live through words and so on and so forth. It became something which was hyper real, as opposed to an opportunity to maybe talk a little bit about Elizabethan England, and so. it's nice to see this series taking its chances when it can, I suppose is what I'm saying. The previous episode in this series was total sci-fi. It was out there. It was brilliant. But when you're on Earth and you're in a historical period, maybe this is what Doctor Who should be about. Is just sort of saying, well, actually, this is what life was like at this point, and exploring that. And I think that's refreshing, and I like that.
Yeah. Oh, look. I mean, let's face it. It was. There was nothing original about the premise of the story. It's a classic sci-fi trope, going right back to the Ray Bradbury short story about the hunters hunting dinosaurs, and one of them steps off the walkway and treads on a flower, and they go back to, instead of modern America, it's modern America as a Nazi regime.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know, changing history is a classic sci-fi trope, and that, right the way through. This one, what was I think so great about this one, that it first of all, it got the atmosphere of the period they were going to very well without bashing you over the head with it.
On a BBC budget, no less.
On a BBC budget, albeit Doctor Who has one of the bigger BBC budgets, but it's still a BBC budget.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's not Netflix or Amazon.
No.
Commissioning. But the other thing I think about it, sci-fi has all and drama in general has always, or TV drama or TV production in general, has always been used by writers and producers to comment on the world as is. You can think back in another genre, MASH, mm-hmm. the comedy series that followed the film too. They were satires that they were actually about Vietnam. They couldn't make them about Vietnam, so they made them about the previous war.
Yeah.
In Korea.
Yeah.
And point out the absurdities. And it goes on with we're dealing with creative people who express views, and you can take the views or leave them, and sometimes they're expressed well and sometimes they're not. But art drama, it's not just about escapism. Creativity is also about making an audience think, and you only have to look at the classic sci-fi dystopias, from anything from The Road to Blade Runner. Even Alien. Alien is a satire on American corporate culture at one level.
Okay, yeah, I can buy that. It's also a slasher horror in space. But,
it's a haunted, absolutely. Yeah, it's a haunted house movie satirising the worst excesses of globalist corporate culture.
Yeah. Oh, I see. In terms of the crew being expendable and all sort of stuff.
Yeah, and in fact,
okay.
The management have got this secret plan to weaponize and make vast amounts of money out of
okay. Even at their own expense. Because obviously when the alien comes back to Earth, it's going to get out.
Yeah.
And they don't care about that. They just want to make money. Oh, I like it. Yeah, I like it. Yeah. So there's an environmental issue there as well. Yeah. So I suppose actually what we're highlighting here is the fact that people will take or leave these issues, and should take or leave them as much as they want to.
Yeah.
It is the prerogative of the artist to put it in there.
Absolutely.
And it's the prerogative of the viewer to agree or not. I suppose what I would say, and as a closing statement on that though, is it not ironic that those people who throw around the term snowflake are so easily and noisily offended? So just finally, I want to highlight probably a future media pick, because it's so glorious. And that is that we recently got a teaser trailer for The Last Kingdom. This is season 3. It's been picked up by Netflix because apparently the BBC didn't think it was doing very well, but it's done quite well in hindsight on Netflix. The first 2 seasons, I do believe, are available at the moment. And it looks like this is probably going to be rounding it all off with... well, again, already I'm kind of grimly excited for references to England and all this other stuff. This stuff that's completely anachronistic in many respects, but hey, it's a Last Kingdom. I'm glad that they're gonna bring the story to an end.
And actually, also all the things that we know and love so much about the Last England production, and I noticed, and I particularly thought of you when I saw that trailer too, because I noticed that they've kept in the rectangular shield so that you can tell the two sides apart in a battle scene. That's
Yay! Yeah, yeah. Tongue firmly in cheek, but we're going to have to comment on it when it comes out, I think, without a doubt.
Bernard Cornwell is one of our best historical writers working today. So
yeah, Bernard Cornwell. Yeah, he's very cool, and also actually, I do believe that one of the Bernard Cornwell books has. Well, I think they all do have some sort of reference, but one of them has a picture of the helmet that was found. It's called the York helmet, I believe, or the Coppergate helmet, that was found underneath the Jorvik Viking Centre where I used to work. It's right on the front of it. So yeah, they're stories that anchor themselves in history, and I think that's one of the reasons why sometimes I'm a bit frustrated by them. But yeah, good books, good stories, and hopefully a good series.
It'll be fun. It'll be certainly fun talking about it.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you as ever so much for your time this month, Mr. Brockman. Hopefully you guys at home have enjoyed this watching brief. Please do comment below, discuss and debate the topics at hand. And next month will be a little less spooky, hopefully.
Well, yeah, but will we have the Christmas decorations up?
Oh, not in November. Have some respect, some self-respect, man, honestly.
The Christmas stuff was up before the Halloween stuff in one of our local shops.
Really? Wow. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, actually,
the Christmas bickies and the chocolates were there before the chocolate ghosts and.
Oh, so disturbing.
Apparently,
that was the inspiration for Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas. Was seeing a shop where these things were on this, they were on the same aisle, but they're clashing as well at the same time. So yeah, it's that time of year. Okay, maybe I'll put something, maybe a little tree or something. We'll see. Anyway, thank you again. As ever, guys, until next time, do take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.